Welcome, and thank you for joining for another whiskey review. Today, we're going to take a look at the Talisker, 25 years old, vintage 2004 cask strength. Little picture of the bottle here. Talisker from the island of Skye, off the west coast of Scotland. A distillery that I have brought you many vintages of their whiskey. The 10, the 18, the 30 and the 25, but all of those in the 45.7% ABV version. This one is a much older bottling, again the 2004 bottling, and it is a cask strength, a much different whiskey than the current 25-year-old 45.7 that I had previously bought you a few whiskey reviews back. And let me tell you all about why. The first difference is you're going to notice is this is a cask strength version as compared to the 45.7% ABV. But this being so old, this 2004 bottling, we are talking about 1970s distillate as far as when the whiskey was made and then put in the barrels. So we're going to get into all the differences as far as how the whiskey is as far as nose and palate, but let me tell you a little bit more about this particular bottling. This particular bottling is at 57.8% ABV, so this is a cask strength whiskey. But every year they change, or at least when they used to be cask strength, I believe it's 01 through 2010. Every year is a little bit different because they did a mixture of casks. And then essentially what they would always do is number them right here at the top. So for this particular year of 2004, there were 21,000 bottles made. Seems like a lot. This particular bottle is 16,604. And I gotta tell you, I was so impressed with this whiskey. I was able to pick up another version of the 2004 as well as a couple versions of the 2005. So before I get too far into this, obviously I'm pretty impressed with this particular whiskey. Let's just get right into it, and let me tell you why. On the nose. Strong punch. I mean, it is strong caramel, apples, and fresh fruit. So much different than the current 25. Current 25 is very subtle, very subdued, very easy drinking whiskey, where this one's extremely aggressive. And let me tell you, when I first opened this bottle, this thing was just roaring out of the bottle as soon as I popped it. Well, actually I didn't exactly pop the cork. The cork completely disintegrated the second I touched it, since it had been sitting around 16 years and the cork was extremely dry. So I had to go with the top of an old Talisker 18 after I carefully took out all the pieces out of the top with a wine cork and dug out the one piece that fell in there with a chopstick. So very dry cork, a little bit hard to find, and then it was hard to get to once I did finally find it because the cork had gone bad, but very much well worth it. And when I first popped the thing open, man, it was just it's a smoke monster with some nice subtle fruits, but this has really changed a ton as I work my way down this bottle. In fact, this is probably a whiskey that has changed more than any other whiskey I've ever had as far as when you open the bottle compared to as you drank it down. And I gotta tell you, in a great way. This thing is so fruity. It's tropical fruits, think mango, but then it has a nice apple note to it. The caramel is so rich. So it's a nice balance between a tropical fruit, maybe like a tangerine. Tangerine, it comes off me like a little bit more sugary of an orange, which that's definitely what I'm getting here. I'm getting this nice baked soft apple with some light cinnamon spice on it. There is some smokiness, but it's very subdued compared to smoky whiskeys and Taliskers in general. Almost think if you've had like a current version of the Talisker 30, it's kind of similar to that as far as its fruitiness and its tameness as far as the smoke. Nice little heather honey note that you only get in Scotch whiskeys, because they really use the heather honey a little bit different. Or I think pretty much all the honey is kind of the heather honey to me with Scotch whiskeys, whether it's a Highland Park or like in this Talisker right here. But amazingly soft on the nose in regards to alcohol. This one, again, as I mentioned earlier, is a 57.8% ABV. So it's a high ABV, and you get almost no alcohol on the nose, especially, again, as I've worked my way down this bottle. Unfortunately, I need to source another 2004, because this one is about down to here. Me and a couple of my friends, Dustin, who you've seen on some of my previous channels, and my buddy Keith from the Malton Man Cave, we've hammered into this bottle pretty hard, as well as another friend from New York whenever he is able to come into town. So I really put a beating on this one. This was my very, very first Talisker 25, and I loved it so much. I really tore into it pretty hard. I've only had this bottle about 6 months, and it's almost gone. But I wanted to bring it to you guys, just in case you were able to pick up a bottle of this, or if you've been debating buying one off of auction, or if you've seen one laying around on the shelves collecting dust. This is a great one to pick up. All right, I'm going to give it a quick sip. Just an explosion of flavor. More peaty on the palate than it is on the nose. In terms of that traditional Talisker peppery smoke, it is right there on the palate, but just very rich and full compared to, like, say, the 10-year-old. You get the same flavors, just amped up and just smoothed out and more melted and mellow in this 25-year-old. Just an excellent, excellent mouthfeel. Very viscous. After that initial smoke and pepper go away, you get the apple, you get that nice, rich caramel. I had mentioned caramel covered apples before, but this one is such a soft, warm caramel and such a warm, light apple with just a little bit of cinnamon and pepper on top of it. Excellent. All right, so I added a little bit of water to it. I usually always add water for all my reviews, but usually this one I do drink completely neat. I usually don't add any water to it, even though it's cask strength, because it drinks so easy and nose so light as far as the alcohol smell, and I just love that richness of flavor. But for all my reviews, I always put a little bit of water into it, so this is no exception, even though I would prefer to cask strength. Now I will say, once you put a little bit of water in this, the fruit flavors do come up a little bit more. That tangerine, that apple, that baked spiced apple just is such in the forefront, so predominant with a couple drops of water. That lovely caramel and honey's right there. And just a little bit of that mild pepper when you add a few drops of water. It does bring up a little bit more of the nose, like I said, with the fruits on this one. So maybe I would like to smell it, at least nose it with a little bit of water. But again, on the palate, I think it drinks perfectly neat. But let me tell you what my thoughts are when you add a couple drops of water and what it does to the palate. It softens up the texture. Sort of adds a little bit more of that cinnamon, peppery spice to it as compared to drinking neat, which is nice. Again, I would prefer it just neat, but it is different and also incredibly delicious with a few drops of water. So you really can't go wrong with either one of these. You go neat, you go with a little bit of water, both are fantastic. I personally would do neat both ways, it's just me. But again, this is not something that you could really screw up unless you put ice in it or you did some kind of a mixer, which if you did, probably not watching this channel. Anyway, this particular Talisker 25, I'm going to try to bring you more of the cask strength versions. This is the 04 version. I'm going to give this a whopping 93.5 out of 100. This is just an A+ whiskey for any cask strength Talisker lovers out there. Which I know they don't make a lot of cask strength versions of it. This is absolutely my favorite version of Talisker. For me, I would rather have one of these bottles than two of the regular 30 or 25. It is that much better of a whiskey. And too bad this is not how they make it anymore, because this is an absolute stunner of a whiskey. I cannot speak about it highly enough. And I will also go as far as to say this. I've given up to a 95 as far as a score on this whiskey review channel. But that was previous whiskeys before I had as many scotches as I've tried now, and before I've had this bottle in particular. I will say this is probably better than any of the whiskeys that I've brought you in the past, especially any of the peated whiskeys. I think my highest score has been a Highland Park 25, the 45.7 7% ABV version that I gave a 95. I would not give that whiskey a 95 now. And this, even though I said 93.5, is absolutely my favorite peated whiskey that I've ever brought to you guys on this channel. Having said that, I have other peated whiskeys that are better that I'll be bringing you soon. Stay tuned for those. But this one, so far, best whiskey I've ever brought to you on the channel. I think that highly of it. Talisker 25-year-old cask strength. This is the 2004 vintage, the 03, the 05, the 06, the 09. Any ones you can get your hands on, I would recommend doing it. Excellent whiskey. Once again, thank you for joining for another one of Mike's whiskey reviews. I'd like to hear your thoughts in the comment section if you've been able to try any of these gems. And until next time, happy drinking.